We live in this reality that is just like obsessively curated by the undo button. I mean, think about your daily routine for a second.
Right, like when you mistype a text message and you just immediately backspace.
Exactly. Or you take a slightly unflattering photo and boom, it is instantly in the trash folder. We have engineered this constant, completely frictionless ability to polish our lives until they appear perfectly flawless. And it feels safe. It feels controlled.
Oh, it's essentially a massive psychological safety net. I mean, culturally, we have completely eliminated the need to sit with our missteps or our awkward imperfections, really.
Yeah, we just swipe them away.
Right, we swipe them away before our brain even has time to process that a mistake actually occurred.
But consider what happens when you physically remove that safety net. Like, what if the only way you were allowed to record your experiences, to actually document your life, was permanently in dark ink with absolutely no way to erase a single wandering line?
Honestly, for anyone who is accustomed to digital perfection, that proposition sounds like a highly specific form of psychological torture.
It is terrifying. But today's deep dive is going to demonstrate why losing that undo button might actually be the exact neurological shock to the system that we all need to start genuinely seeing the world around us.
Yeah, we really are blind to so much of it.
We are. So we're looking at a thoroughly engaging guide today called Drawn on the Way by Sarah Nisbett. She is a self-taught artist, and the origin of her entire philosophy is grounded in something incredibly mundane, which is just profound exhaustion.
Yeah, I love this part because she wasn't sitting in some, sunlit atelier or an elite university classroom. The spark for this entire method occurred in 2012, deep underground on the New York City subway system.
The F train, specifically.
Yeah.
She was commuting home, entirely burned out from the workday, and experiencing that intense screen fatigue that, we all know way too well.
Oh, absolutely, where your eyes just kind of cross.
Right. She just couldn't bear to look at her phone for another second. So she digs around in her bag, pulls out a completely standard blank notepad and a pen she had essentially pilfered from the office supply closet. She just looked up at the people around her.
And that physical act, of looking up from the curated digital world into the chaotic physical one, that changed the entire trajectory of her life.
It really did. She locked onto this older gentleman sitting across the train car, and he was wearing this rumpled, textured three-piece suit with a matching fedora.
What a great detail to spot.
Seriously. So she just started tracing the lines of his suit on her notepad. And without even realizing it, that one single sketch kicked off a daily, years-long live sketching project. We're talking thousands of drawings, spontaneous connections with strangers globally, all stemming from one gritty commute.
But the critical distinction that we really need to make right now for everyone listening is that the source material is not a technical step-by-step manual on how to draw a proportionate human face, because that would be completely missing the point. What we are unpacking today is a radical shift in human perception. We are going to look at the psychology of how artificial constraints breed genuine creativity and the neurological benefits of making unfixable mistakes. Plus, how the bumpy, completely unpredictable nature of daily life can serve as the ultimate training ground for focus.
And the starting line for this entire philosophy is, well, it's wildly counterintuitive. Because if you want to capture a world that is moving fast, dodging around you, and constantly changing, the author argues that you must immediately and severely limit your own options.
You essentially put your brain in a creative straitjacket, right? To eliminate decision fatigue.
Yes, decision fatigue.
Because that is the quiet killer of momentum. When we think about when you walk into an art store and you are confronted with 60 different gradients of graphite pencils, watercolor brushes, expensive pigment.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
It is. Your brain is burning cognitive energy just trying to optimize the choice before you have even made a single mark on the page. By the time you actually sit down, you're just exhausted.
So her solution to that is shockingly basic. Her ultimate tool of choice is literally just a standard blue 0.7 millimeter rollerball pen.
Just a standard pen.
Exactly. The exact kind you buy in bulk at an office supply store. She notes that standard ballpoints are okay, but, the ink can drag and leave those sticky little blobs that ruin a line.
Oh, I hate those.
Right. And markers tend to feather out and bleed right through the paper. But a simple rollerball gives this smooth, vibrant, uninterrupted flow. And she fiercely warns against buying those beautiful artisanal leather-bound sketch pads.
Oh, I totally get why, because a $30 sketchbook instantly makes the blank page feel precious.
Yes.
The monetary value of the paper actually raises the psychological stakes. You suddenly feel this immense pressure that whatever you put on that page needs to justify the cost of the book.
Which instantly triggers performance anxiety.
Exactly. Whereas a $2 spiral-bound notebook from a pharmacy actively lowers the stakes. It gives your brain permission to play rather than perform.
But the most intimidating constraint, like the absolute non-negotiable golden rule of this entire methodology, is that you must leave the eraser behind.
No erasers.
No pencils.
Ow.
No erasable gel pens. The author insists that pencils inherently tempt us into timidity.
Because the presence of an eraser fundamentally changes the way your brain processes an activity.
See, I have to push back on this a bit, because jumping straight into permanent ink sounds absolutely paralyzing. I mean, anyone who relies on a safety net is going to freeze.
You think so?
Oh, definitely. It feels akin to typing a high-stakes, career-defining email to your boss, but someone has physically pried the backspace key off your keyboard. Like every single typo is a permanent record. Why intentionally induce that kind of panic?
Well, the panic is actually the old curated mindset fighting for survival. Neurologically speaking, an eraser interrupts your connection to your intuitive creative instincts because it shifts your brain into evaluation mode. The mere option to undo something suggests a binary state. It tells you that there's a definitively right mark and a wrong mark. So your analytical left hemisphere takes over, constantly judging the output.
I see.
But when you operate in permanent ink, you bypass that analytical filter entirely. You are forced to abandon the binary of right and wrong.
And the author outlines a brilliant framework for what happens next. When you are living in permanent ink, you are forced into a corner where you only have 3 possible reactions to making a mark on the page.
Right.
You accept the line as it is and move forward. Or you turn the page and abandon the attempt entirely. Or, and this is the core of the whole philosophy, you adapt the mistake and weave it into the actual structure of what you are building.
Which means every line ceases to be a potential failure. It simply becomes a permanent record of your process.
It's an incredible framework for resilience.
Right.
But let's look at the reality of the situation for a second. You're sitting on a train with a permanent pen, cheap paper, and absolutely zero formal drawing training.
You're going to make a profound mess.
You're going to make a profound mess, and the psychological block that follows a terrible drawing is intense.
Oh, that block is the inner critic. And it thrives on the gap between your taste and your current ability.
The author experienced this firsthand during what she actually calls her Picasso epiphany. So early in her project, she was riding the subway, genuinely enjoying the rhythm of sketching a passenger. But then she looked down at the result, these scratchy, wobbly, completely disproportionate lines, and she felt this crushing wave of disappointment.
Sure.
Because she had been operating under the incredibly common assumption that valid art requires perfect photographic fidelity to objective reality.
Right, and we all fall into that trap when we're trying a new skill. We inherently benchmark our clumsy beginner efforts against the polished output of absolute masters, rather than valuing the act of skill acquisition itself.
But then her art history background kicked in. She realized that we don't revere artists like Da Vinci, Van Gogh, or Picasso because they functioned like human copy machines.
No, of course not.
I mean, if we just wanted perfect replication, we would just use a camera. We celebrate these masters specifically because they recreated the world exactly as they perceived it. The distortion, the wobbly lines, the weird proportions, that subjective, highly personal lens is the actual art.
Right, the subjectivity isn't a failure to capture reality. The subjectivity is the entire point.
It's like expecting everyday communication to be perfectly eloquent. Like if you travel to a foreign country, you don't refuse to speak the language just because you aren't writing Shakespearean sonnets.
Right, you stumble through the grammar.
Exactly, because the goal is connection, not perfection. And it's funny, in a previous career, the author was actually a professional opera singer.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she used to tell her students, if you can physically make a sound, you can sing. And drawing is the exact same mechanism. If you can leave a mark, you can draw.
Well, understanding that conceptually is one thing, but that internal critic, that voice constantly demanding perfection, is deeply ingrained. It functions like an overzealous internal auditor, constantly searching for compliance violations in your work.
That's a great way to put it.
And what is so effective about the author's approach is her tactical management of that voice. You cannot debate the internal auditor using logic because it will always find a flaw.
Right, you essentially have to parent it. She literally tells her own brain, if you can't behave, we can't draw it today. She draws a hard boundary, tells the critic to zip it, and simply refuses to engage with the judgment.
But that boundary only holds if you simultaneously rewrite your metrics for success. Think about how you operate in your daily life. When you attempt a new hobby or, even just cook a new recipe, are you measuring the experience by how much joy it gave you?
Usually not.
Right. You are instantly critiquing the output against some professional, productivity-driven standard. We are wired by a highly capitalist, output-oriented society to evaluate our time by the excellence of the product. The author argues for a radical metric shift. You evaluate the experience entirely by the joy of the process.
Which sounds incredibly freeing in theory. But theory goes straight out the window when a mistake literally ruins something you were immensely proud of.
Oh, that is the ultimate stress test of the no eraser rule.
It is. And the book features this vivid anecdote that perfectly illustrates this. It's the C train story. So the author is on a crowded morning train in New York. She is sketching a woman sitting opposite her who has this striking, geometrically sleek, angular bob haircut.
Okay, setting the scene.
And the sketch is flowing beautifully. The author even admits it is the best drawing she has done all week. She's completely in the zone, feeling that rare high of absolute confidence.
So the emotional investment in that specific piece of paper is peaking.
Exactly. So she leans in to add the final elegant continuous line to define the edge of the hair. The pen touches the paper, and at that exact microsecond, the passenger sitting right next to her aggressively shifts their weight and bumps her arm hard.
Oh no, a physical collision with reality.
Yes, the rollerball pen violently skids across the page, leaving a massive, jagged, chaotic trail of permanent blue ink right through the center of her flawless drawing. Now, put yourself in that seat. What is your immediate reaction? Because my instinct would be visceral anger.
Oh, absolutely.
I would probably rip the page out, crumple it up, and glare at the person who bumped me for ruining my masterpiece.
Well, ripping the page out is choice number 2 from her framework, right? Turning the page and resetting, it's safe, but it teaches you nothing. She leaned into choice number 3.
She adapted. She forced herself not to abandon the sketch. She looked at this horrific, jagged mistake, placed her pen directly back onto the end of that ruined line, and traced it. Then she purposefully drew another jagged line right next to it, and another. She repeated the error over and over until that single, accidental, chaotic stroke multiplied and transformed into this wild, eclectic tangle of lines that redefined the texture of the hair.
See, the underlying neuroplasticity of that moment is just fascinating to me. By refusing to let the mistake be fatal, she forced her brain to forge a new pathway. That forced adaptation actually birthed an entirely new signature artistic technique for her. From that commute onward, she used that exact method of layering, wandering, imperfect lines to capture complex patterns in hair.
The obstacle literally became the path. And once you realize that a mistake can just be the foundation of a new technique, your brain stops obsessing over protecting the perfect line.
Right.
And when you drop that anxiety, you suddenly free up a massive amount of cognitive bandwidth.
Bandwidth that can finally be redirected outward toward your environment. Because when you start worrying about how your hand is moving, you can actually start noticing the hidden narratives unfolding in plain sight.
And the source material introduces a brilliant method for capturing those narratives quickly without getting bogged down in the details. She takes a classic literary device and applies it directly to the sketchpad. Visual synecdoche.
Right, synecdoche.
Synecdoche is using one specific part of something to represent the whole, like referring to a fleet of cars simply as wheels. You don't need to describe the entire car for the listener to grasp the concept.
And by using visual synecdoche, you are effectively hacking the viewer's brain.
Hacking it.
Yeah, because human brains are prediction machines. We naturally want to fill in missing information. If you draw every single brick of a building, the brain just passively consumes the image. But if you only draw a fraction of the scene, you invite the viewer to actively participate in building the rest of the world in their mind.
And the examples she gives of this are so evocative. There's a scene where she is sitting outside a lively restaurant on a beautiful evening. A traditional approach would be to painstakingly draw the tables, the waiters, the menu, the architecture.
Which takes forever.
It does. So she completely ignores all of that.
Yeah.
She focuses entirely on the woman sitting next to her on a bar stool. But she doesn't even draw the whole woman. She just sketches her legs, cross at the knee, with a leopard print slingback shoe balanced precariously on the very tip of her toe.
Oh, wow.
Just dangling in the air while she leans in to talk to her date.
That is an incredibly efficient transfer of emotion. That single dangling shoe communicates the joy, the flirtation, and the precarious lightness of a spring evening perfectly without a single brick being drawn.
Yes. Then she applies this to character study with a woman she calls Iris at a French cafe. She spots this older woman dining completely alone. Again, no background, no cafe tables. She just draws this woman's delicate, slightly dour expression, her gray hair piled up in this messy, chaotic updo, these massive, oversized glasses, and a very subtle, secret smile.
I love that.
But the anchoring detail, the actual synecdoche, is a series of cascading, intricate, beaded necklaces. Looking at those necklaces, the author's imagination just runs wild. She imagines this woman has collected them from faraway exotic lovers, that she lives in a sprawling apartment filled with abstract art and pastel parakeets.
And this perfectly illustrates a profound structural concept in the book. A truly observational drawing isn't just a recording of an event. It's a collision of three distinct stories.
It creates a fascinating triangle. The first point of the triangle is your story. That's the visceral sensory memory of you, the artist, occupying that space.
Right.
When the author looks at a quick sketch of a fashionable woman zipping by on a scooter in Paris, the drawing acts as a hard drive for her own memory. It brings back the smell of the espresso, the heat of the sun on her neck, the feeling of sitting in that specific cafe.
Because the drawing anchors the memory far more effectively than a smartphone photo ever could. Drawing requires sustained attention. Then, the second point of the triangle is the subject's story. This is the unvarnished, objective reality of that woman on the scooter. What are her actual struggles? Where is she rushing to? We, as observers, will never actually know her reality, but the act of drawing her honors her existence in that fleeting moment.
That's beautifully said. And the final point completes the triangle, which is the viewer's story. Because the viewer wasn't sitting in the cafe, and because visual synecdoche leaves so much blank white space on the paper, the viewer gets to project their own entire psychological landscape onto the image. They might look at that scooter and imagine themselves riding it through a different city entirely. As the person holding the pen, you were just the conduit connecting your memory, the subject's reality, and the viewer's imagination.
It is a beautiful philosophy of connection, but the practical application still requires bypassing the brain's natural urge to judge and control the pen.
Which brings us to the most extreme and honestly the most fun exercise, the book blind contour drawing. If you want to shut down the internal auditor, you literally have to blindfold your judgment. You look directly at your subject and you draw it without ever looking down at the paper.
And because the human brain is inherently deeply insecure and prone to cheating to avoid looking foolish, the author recommends constructing a physical barrier.
She calls it the shield of creative faith.
I love that name.
Right. You take a spare piece of paper, stab your pen straight through the center of it, and slide it down the barrel until it covers your hand like a tiny umbrella. It physically blocks your line of sight to the sketchbook.
You are completely severing the visual feedback loop.
Completely. Yeah. You cannot course correct, which means your analytical brain simply has to power down.
But when you remove the visual feedback loop, you are forced to rely purely on tactile visual translation. How do you orient yourself in that absolute void?
Well, you have to find what she calls the hook. When you are staring down a terrifyingly blank page, you don't just put the pen down randomly. You scan your subject and wait for the very first detail that naturally arrests your attention, the element that pulls your eye in. That becomes the gravitational center of the entire drawing.
It anchors your focus, and the book details a striking exercise using a seemingly worthless object to demonstrate this.
A $3 thrift store find. It's a small, fish-shaped Cinnabar lacquer box that she uses to hold ink on her desk. It's highly textured, incredibly detailed. So she sets a timer for 5 minutes, equips her shield of creative faith so she can't see her hand, and scans the box.
Looking for the hook.
Looking for the hook. And she finds it, the large, round, pronounced eye of the carved fish.
So she anchors her pen there.
Exactly. And without breaking her gaze from the actual object, she lets her pen act like a seismograph for her eyesight. As her eyes slowly trace the topography of the box, moving up the curve of the back, feeling the ridges of the scales, tracing the open mouth and the jagged bottom fins with her hand, moves in sync. She isn't worrying if the tail connects to the body or the proportions are monstrous. She is bypassing judgment entirely and building a purely emotional and tactile connection with the object.
The result of an exercise like that is deeply connected to a historical philosophy the author weaves into the text, the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi.
Oh, right.
Emerging in the 15th century as a reaction to the lavish, over-polished aesthetics of the time, wabi-sabi is the profound appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is finding the beauty in the cracked teapot, the rusted hinge, or the asymmetrical bowl.
So when you spend 5 minutes drawing a cheap thrift store box without looking at the paper, the final image is absolutely going to be wobbly, distorted, and beautifully incomplete. It is pure wabi-sabi.
But the value isn't in the distorted image itself. By slowing down to intimately interrogate the physical topography of that object, you are claiming it. Inanimate objects don't possess their own emotions, but they act as perfect mirrors, reflecting our internal states back at us. By tracing their outlines, even blindly, we learn to converse with our environment. We imbue the mundane with life.
So whether you are enduring a miserable commute, sitting quietly in a cafe, or just staring at a chipped coffee mug on your office desk, the central revelation here is incredibly liberating. Live sketching is not about proving your technical excellence or producing museum-ready artifacts.
Not at all.
It is simply a tool for fiercely paying attention to your life. It's about bravely leaving the erasure behind, embracing the jagged lines, and extracting the extraordinary narratives hidden within completely everyday moments.
Which brings us to a fascinating, broader paradigm shift to consider. We are currently living in an era where generative AI can produce a flawlessly rendered, photorealistic image of a woman on a Parisian scooter in about 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's wild.
And the sheer perfection of the final product is becoming effectively worthless because it is instant and infinite. In that kind of world, the process of capturing reality, the wobbly lines, the mistakes, the physical friction of translating what you see through a flawed human hand, is the only thing that retains actual, irreplaceable value.
Because the imperfection proves a human was actually there to witness it.
Precisely. So the next time your plans are derailed, or life bumps your arm and leaves a jagged trail of ink across your perfectly curated day, do not frantically search for the undo button.
No erasers.
No erasers. Look at the mess, find the hook, and ask yourself what entirely new pattern that mistake is inviting you to draw.